You may be seated, thank you.
All right. You ready to pick up where we left off?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, Steve.
Your Honor, this time the state of Florida would call Craig DeYoung.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Thank you. Go ahead, Ms. Summer.
Thank you. May it please the court, defense counsel. Good afternoon, sir. Please state your name for the record.
Craig DeYoung.
What is your profession, Mr. DeYoung?
I'm a driver engineer paramedic with Pasco County Fire Rescue.
How long have you been in that profession?
I've been with the county for just over 8 years.
What training did you go through to enable you to be licensed to be a driver engineer paramedic?
I have an EMT license with the state of Florida. I have firefighter certificates 1 and 2 with the state of Florida, and a paramedic license with the state of Florida.
When did you obtain your firefighter 1 and 2?
That was finished in October of 2007,
And then your paramedic
in December of 2008,
and your EMT?
in December of 2006.
And so you started with EMT, then you went for firefighter 1 and 2, and then paramedic?
Yes, ma'am.
Prior to being hired with Pasco County Fire Rescue, were you working anywhere else?
I worked part-time for TransCare as an EMT for roughly a year.
Anything else in the healthcare field?
No.
What station are you normally assigned?
Station 16 in Zephyr Hills.
And where is that located in Zephyr Hills?
It's on State Road 54 between Deandary and Eland.
Were you working in your capacity as a driver, engineer, and paramedic on January 13th of 2014?
I was.
Were you working there at that particular station 16 on 54 in Zephyr Hills?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you all respond to a 911 call at the Cobb Theater over on Oakley Grove and Wesley Chapel?
We did. We were on the road when we heard it come out as a gunshot wound at the Cobb Theater, so we started making our way that way in case we would be needed. And then when dispatch changed it to, or upgraded it to a possible active shooter with multiple victims, we were added to the call.
When you say we were added to the call, describe to the court how logistically you all respond to a shooting call or an active shooter call or anything where you might be in harm's way.
We would stage to the scene. We would respond to the scene and then stage and wait for law enforcement to clear it as safe before we would head in.
When you use the term stage, what do you commonly refer to that as?
You park somewhere at a distance away that where you're not in any danger, and you wait for law enforcement to give you the okay to go in.
Were you actually the driver of that engine on that particular day?
Yes, I was.
So do you recall where you actually staged at that point?
By the time we had arrived, the scene was already safe, so we pulled around to the back of the theater where the other units were.
And when you say the back of the theater, you drove around behind the theater?
Yes, to the left behind the theater where all the rear exterior doors are.
Who did you meet with back there?
Engine 13 and Rescue 13 were already there, like maybe Rescue 26 also, by the time we got there. So we parked there and made our way into the theater.
Do you recall what time it was in conjunction with the 911 call that you arrived on scene and actually got out of the engine?
No, the call came out around 13:30 and it probably took us 10 minutes to get there, maybe 10-15 minutes.
So you got out. Were you tasked with doing any particular task on scene?
I mean, not directly. We put on our medical gloves and made our way to the theater to see what we could do to help.
Where did you go inside the theater?
I walked in the rear exterior door that leads into the theater. The theater screen was to the right, Mr. Olson was on the ground being secured to a long spine board and to the stretcher, being tended to by 3 or 4 fire rescue personnel. I looked up and saw Miss Olson somewhere up in the theater being tended to by 2 fire rescue personnel, I think. So.
And these would have been some that were on the rescue units, right?
Between the engine and the rescues, yes ma'am.
And the rescues are commonly referred to as what?
Ambulances.
And you're the actual big fire truck?
Fire engine, yeah.
Okay. So at that point, there was nobody else to tend to at that point?
Right. Those are the only 2 patients that we knew of.
Okay. Were you asked to tend to someone who later became known to you as Curtis Reeves?
Yes, I was.
Okay. Who asked you to do that?
I was making some small talk with my captain-in-chief when a law enforcement officer came over and said something to the effect of, this guy is asking to have his eyes flushed out. He thinks he might have popcorn in his left eye.
Okay. Did you then make contact with someone who was identified to you as Curtis Reeves?
Yes, ma'am. I went and grabbed the medical bag and went over to the squad car that he was being detained in.
And that was back out in the parking lot? Is that yes?
Yes, ma'am.
So what would be the course of treatment if someone believes they have something in their eye?
Flushing it with sterile water. I took a bottle of sterile water from our medical bag. I punctured a hole in the cap with my pocket knife to make it easier to squirt. And I had him tilt his head to the left and squirted from the bridge of his nose.
Let's back up. So,
Okay.
so the course of treatment would be to rinse it out with a sterile water?
Yes, ma'am.
Have you done that in the past?
I can't think of specifically, but I may have.
And you've been in this field for over 7 years,
Yes,
right? So you made contact with someone who was identified as Curtis Reeves. Do you see him in the courtroom today?
Yes, I did.
Can you point him out and describe what he's wearing, please, sir?
We stay away right
He'll stipulate, so when you made contact with him, did you make any observations of his face?
Yes.
Okay. And could you tell if he was wearing glasses?
He was wearing prescription glasses.
Okay. And what did you do with regard to the prescription glasses?
I removed them from his head and put them on the trunk of the police car.
So you would be able to rinse his eye out?
Correct.
Okay. All right, so now you had indicated that you sprayed it from, and I cut you off there, can you describe?
From the bridge of the nose downward through the left eye,
Okay. And how many times did you do that?
2 or 3 times.
And when you were doing that, did you see any cuts to either his cheek? Let's start there. Did you see any cuts to his cheek?
Not that I can recall.
Did you see any cuts to his eyebrow area?
Not that I can recall.
Did you see any cuts to his nose?
Not that I can recall.
Did you see any cuts to behind his ears?
Not that I can recall. I don't think I assisted him, really. I'm sorry?
I didn't hear what you said.
I said I didn't really assess his ears, so.
And did he complain of anything to you?
No, not other than the left eye, no.
And you rinsed that out one time. Did you do it multiple times?
2 or 3 times, yes.
If I can approach. And Paramedic DeYoung, I'm showing what's been previously entered into evidence as State's Exhibit 3. I would specifically draw your attention to numbers 211-6637, 6652, and 6649. Ask if you take a look at those. Do you recognize the person depicted in these photographs?
Yes.
And do you see any injuries to him on these photographs?
Objection, Your Honor. I don't really testify at this point. It's just asking for a lay opinion of a picture, which you can look at.
I don't believe it's a lay opinion. He's a paramedic. He's been dealing with patients for a number of years, but in the event. Did you see any?
Well, objection, Your Honor.
That's fine, I'll go on. You indicated that you did not see any injury to him when you made contact with him shortly after 1:30 on January 13th of 2014.
That's correct.
Nothing further, Your Honor. I tender the witness.
No question, Your Honor.
Can may this witness be released, or you want to remain on subpoena?
If you could just remain under subpoena, but we'll contact
You're
you.
released. Should you be needed, you may be required to come back. You're still under subpoena, but you're free to go today.
Thank you.
Thank you. Who's next?
Your Honor, the state would call Sergeant Alan Hamilton.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Mr. Garcia?
Thank you, Your Honor. May it please the court, counsel. Mr. Hamilton, good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
Mr. Hamilton, I'm going to ask that you speak loudly and clearly into that microphone so that everyone can hear you, please.
Okay.
If you would, please, can you state your name
Alan Lee Hamilton, Sr.
and your profession?
I'm a sergeant in the Sumter County Sheriff's Department.
And how long have you been employed with the Sumter County Sheriff's Office?
14 and a half years.
What are your duties with the Sumter County Sheriff's Office?
I'm a road patrol supervisor.
And if you would, please, can you share with us your education and training as far as your law enforcement experience?
I have an associate's in criminology and a bachelor's in occupational safety.
Okay. Are you married, sir?
Yes, sir.
To whom?
Angela Hamilton,
And how long have you been married, sir?
7 years.
Sergeant Hamilton, directing your attention to January 13th of 2014, do you recall that date?
Yes, sir.
Did you and your wife plan on having a date?
Yes, sir.
Were you going to go to the Cobb movie theater?
Yes, sir.
Had you picked out a movie?
Not initially, but we just kind of agreed on, when we got here, we just kind of agreed on.
Okay. Did you agree on the lone survivor?
Absolutely. Yes, sir.
What time did you arrive at the Cobb theater?
Just before, which would be 1300, 1 o'clock.
All right. And do you remember what time you purchased your tickets?
From 12:45, 12, best I recall.
Okay. And do you remember what time the movie was going to start?
Just a little after 1, I believe.
All right. And when you entered the movie theater, did you go to the concession stand?
Yes, sir, I did.
Did you purchase any items?
Yes, sir.
And if you would you share with us what you purchased?
Purchased a water, some nachos, and popcorn.
Okay. Now let me ask you this, Sergeant Hamilton. Prior to January 13th of 2014, did you know Mr. Reeves?
No, sir.
Did you know his wife, Vivian Reeves?
No, sir.
Did you know Chad Olson or Nicole Olson?
No, sir.
Never met them before, right?
No, sir.
Had you ever even seen them before?
No, sir.
Never.
Never.
All right. You purchased the bottle of water and the bag of popcorn. You entered the movie theater.
Yes, sir.
Can you tell us where you were sitting? Where did you select your seats?
Initially, we was going to sit to the top, left-hand side. We moved a little bit closer in from where we initially had decided at the very top. If we went any higher, we'd have been in the bistro.
All right, so were you in row A, then the back row up against the wall prior to getting to the bistro?
Yes, sir. That's correct.
And when you entered the movie theater, were the previews playing yet?
No, sir.
What were the lighting conditions in there?
They were low.
Okay. Could you see, though?
Yes, sir.
Now, could you see 5 seats away from you?
Yes, sir.
10 seats away?
Yes, sir.
Could you hear conversations?
Yes, sir.
Could you see people walking in,
Yes, sir.
walking out?
Yes, sir.
Could you see people maybe taking a drink from their soda,
Yes, sir.
eating popcorn?
Yes, sir.
So it was dim, but you could still see, right?
Right.
Now, when the previews came on, were they loud?
Yeah, somewhat. I mean, for in theater, but I mean, it wasn't as loud as what the movie would have been.
Okay. Could you hear conversations while the previews were going on?
Yes, sir.
And do you know what row Mr. and Mrs. Reeves were in?
They were sitting in the same row to my right.
Okay, so it'd be the back row up against the wall, row A.
Yes, sir.
And are you aware, were there any other patrons between you and Mr. and Mrs. Reeves?
Yes, sir. There was an older couple, older white male and female.
Sitting in between you all?
Yes, sir.
All right. Did you see Mr. and Mrs. Olson?
No.
While the previews are playing, did something draw your attention to kind of the center of the movie theater?
My wife, she tapped me on the shoulder and said, hey, you may want to pay attention to this.
Okay.
So, I leaned up and I could hear, a lower tone. Initially before I leaned up, I could hear a lower tone. Conversation was just a little bit lower than what the previews were.
All right. So is it fair to say you said you were on the same row as Mr. Reeves, right?
Yes, sir.
Back row?
Yes, sir.
Were you sitting next to the aisle? Or where exactly were you and where was your wife?
I believe we were a couple seats in from the aisle.
Okay. And would she be the first one? Or it would have been you?
And then me.
Okay. So as you're, and assume you're sitting in that back row, right? You're sitting, your wife is to your right?
Yes, sir.
And you said you leaned, correct?
Yes, sir.
Did you lean this way towards your right looking?
Yes, sir.
All right. And when you looked in that direction, did you see someone
Yes,
or
sir.
hear someone?
I could see and hear what now I know is Mr. Olson.
Okay. Did you hear what Mr. Olson was saying?
He said something to the effect about, I was just trying to text my, and he used the F word in there at some point, do you mind?
Okay. And it's okay to say it. So, just so we're clear, he said, I was texting my
Fucking daughter.
Do you mind? Can you demonstrate for Judge Barthel how and what position he was in when you heard this statement?
Yes, sir.
Judge, may he step down for demonstrational purposes, please?
Certainly.
And straight chair right there,
Oh.
all around.
Yeah, that one.
You fall down around.
Yeah. Sergeant Hamilton, if you would, please, I'm going to give the chair to you, and I want you to demonstrate for the judge what you observed back on January 13th of 2014. Make believe that that's, a theater chair, so place it however you need to.
Keep in mind, that those chairs can either be this way or they can be this way. I couldn't tell that from where I was at.
Okay.
But if you're utilizing the chair, let me get here before I fall on my face. Utilizing the chair, he was bent at the hips, and if I kneel in it, he was bent this way.
Okay.
Kind of propped up, in the chair.
All right.
Or, if he was standing up, I could make a couple assumptions the way he was, but he was propped up, basically in the chair, bent at the hips.
Did you ever see his body come into this section?
No, sir.
You never saw that?
I never seen him raise the chair.
Okay. If you can retake your seat. So, as you're observing Mr. Olson in this position, and I think you had indicated he had just said, I was texting my fucking daughter, do you mind? What happens?
I see and as I used, is a flick of popcorn or a burst of popcorn, and then I see a muzzle blast and I hear a gunshot.
Was it almost instantaneously?
It's all one big ball, yes, sir.
Did, after you heard the bang and the flash, did Mr. Olson say anything?
It was something to the effect, and like I've said, I'm not verbatim, I can't believe he shot me, something to that effect.
Okay.
And
Was he doing any gestures when he made that comment?
he had his hands up on his chest, and I said I could see people, and the outline of his person, what I seen was, was like this.
Okay. In the position that he was in when you indicated that he was leaning, after he had stood up, could you tell, or did he appear to you to be a lot taller than?
Yes, sir.
Did you draw any conclusions from that?
And he was a pretty tall individual. You know, that he was, you know, at least over 6 foot.
Could you tell if this popcorn had hit Mr. Reeves?
No, sir.
Could you see the gun in Mr. Reeves' hands?
No, sir.
Now, you indicate you saw a flicking motion, right, in the popcorn?
Yes, sir.
Did you ever see Mr. Olson throw a cell phone?
No, sir.
Did you ever see Mr. Olson throw a punch?
No, sir.
Did you ever see Mr. Olson climb over the chair and try and get at Mr. Reeves?
I did not see that. No, sir.
It didn't happen, did it?
Objection. That's leading. Direct examination,
It's leading. Rephrase.
Did it happen?
I didn't see it.
Okay. As a law enforcement officer, what did you do having just observed this?
I got up, and as you know, the aisles are pretty close. You know, you can't run down, and I'm not 110 pounds, you know, I'm scooting down trying to make sure where this came from, because I'm not sure who or, you know, what. You know, like I said, it was a very quick thing between the, you know, whatever would have been an argument, to the popcorn flying to the shot, and I moved down towards the area of where, you know, what I felt was, you know, the area that was going to be the shooter, or wherever that shot came from.
Okay. So you walked down row A, or that aisle, right? Did you come to a person who later became known to you as Mr. Reeves?
Yes, sir.
Did you observe Mr. Reeves?
Yes, sir.
Did you observe a firearm?
Yes, sir.
Where was the firearm?
On his left knee.
Okay, and upon observing that, what did you do?
I identified myself as a deputy to him, and reached in just to make sure he wasn't going to, again, I don't know him, don't know what he's capable of. I put my hand in his chest and reached down and grabbed the firearm.
Okay. Did you show him your badge?
Yes, sir.
Show him your credentials?
Yes, sir. No, I didn't show him credentials, I showed him my badge.
You just showed him your badge?
All right, correct.
Did you pick up the firearm? Did you touch the barrel of the firearm?
Yes, sir.
Was it warm?
Yes, sir.
What did that indicate to you?
That weapon had just been fired.
Did you take the magazine out of the firearm?
Yes, I did.
Did you clear the chamber?
I attempted to clear the chamber.
Sergeant Hamilton, you were off duty that day, right?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
Were you carrying your off-duty weapon or your firearm with you?
I had it with me, but not on me whenever I confronted Mr. Reeves.
Okay. Do you have any trouble seeing Mr. Reeves at this point?
No, sir.
When you walked up to him, were his glasses askew or cockeyed or tilted in any way?
No, sir.
Did you give Mr. Reeves any instructions as you're standing there with him?
Yes, sir. I told him to stay seated, and that, you know, we're going to make sure nobody else gets shot, nobody else gets killed, because I knew that law enforcement, somebody was going to call them, and they were going to be coming in there and, you know, try to make sure, apprehend whomever done that. So I just didn't want to see him or anybody else get hurt.
You were concerned for your safety and his, right?
Absolutely.
Did Mr. Reeves make any statements to you?
He initially had said he had been hit with something, and for me to inspect him, to look at him.
Did you do that?
Yes, sir, I did.
Did you observe any injuries on Mr. Reeves?
No, sir, I didn't see anything at the time.
Do you have any cuts?
No, sir.
Any bruises?
No, sir.
Was he bleeding?
No, sir.
Nothing.
I didn't see any of that, no, sir.
Did Mr. Reeves tell you he needed to leave?
Yes, sir. At one point, he said, I need to leave. And again, I reiterated that he needed to stay where he was at until we figured out what was going on.
Did Mr. Reeves say anything to you about what had just occurred?
He said he couldn't believe what he had done.
Sergeant Hamilton, were you going to stay with Mr. Reeves until law enforcement arrived in
Yes,
the
sir.
movie theater?
Yes, sir.
What happened to Mr. Olson after he was shot?
I lost sight of Mr. Olson initially, and because I was more concentrated on, where this shot that came from. And then later on, they had pulled the lights up a little bit, and I seen Mr. Olson's face. He was laying on his back, and I could tell that there was other people, I don't know who they were attempting to give him CPR.
Did you hear gurgling sounds coming from Mr. Olson?
Yes, sir, I did.
And what do you refer those sounds as?
As I said, there's a medical term for it. I haven't looked up, but we in law enforcement call it the death rattle. It's basically the last minutes of your life or seconds, whatever that may be. And again, that's normally what we call it and what we hear. We know that basically that individual is no longer going to make it.
It's not good.
It's not
right?
good.
In your career as a law enforcement officer, have you heard this death rattle before?
Yes, sir, I have.
On how many occasions?
Too many.
After having heard this, did you make any statements or comments to Mr. Reeves?
Yes, sir, I did. I turned to him and told him, I said, that doesn't sound good. I told him, I said, you know what that is.
Did he respond to you?
And yes, sir, he leaned back and he said, I can't believe what I've done.
Well, that wasn't exactly what he said, right?
Objection, Your Honor. Reading.
Sustained just deleting. Rephrase.
What were what were Mr. Reeves' exact words?
He said, I can't believe what I just fucking done.
As you were standing there, did you hear a conversation between Mr. and Mrs. Reeves?
Yes, I did. Yes, sir.
Did you hear Mrs. Reeves make a statement to Mr. Reeves?
Yes, sir.
What was that statement?
That was no cause to shoot that man.
Did Mr. Reeves respond?
Yes, sir. He responded. He turned quickly to her. She was to his right, pointed his finger at her and told her to shut her mouth and not say another word.
Well,
Basically, not to say another fucking word.
Mr. Hamilton, would you tell the court his exact words, please?
He pointed his finger at her and told her to shut her mouth and not to say another fucking word.
Okay. What did Mrs. Reeves do?
She got up out of her chair, moved one or two seats down from him, and turned, and the way she postured, she crossed her legs and crossed her arms and just stared back at him.
Did Mr. and Mrs. Reeves have any further conversations after that?
No, sir.
Did you have any conversations with Mr. Reeves? Any further conversations?
No, sir. If it was brief, just about, that I didn't know this would be Pasco County SWAT, or, if they had a CERT team or whatever, just to, we're going to maintain what we got. And I briefly kept reiterating that to him.
Basically, don't do anything crazy, right? I want to get shot, and I don't want you to get shot.
Right, correct.
Sergeant Hamilton, you know how long it took for the Pasco County Sheriff's Office to arrive?
No, sir, I can't put a time frame on it. At the time, it seemed like forever.
Seemed like an eternity.
Yes, sir.
Did you come in contact with a sergeant from the Pasco County Sheriff's Office who later became known to you as Sergeant Griner?
Yes, sir.
Did he, along with 2 other deputies, arrest Mr. Reeves?
Yes, sir.
Did you see that?
Yes, sir. They placed him in handcuffs.
Was Mr. Reeves sitting in his chair the whole entire time that you were next to him?
Yes, sir.
Did you observe anything in Mr. Reeves' feet?
It was a cell phone.
Notice anything else?
Debris, popcorn debris. I mean, there was.
Did Mr. Reeves at any time try and pick up those items that were on the floor?
He tried to pick up the cell phone. I don't know why, but I told him not to touch anything, to leave everything where it was at.
So you never allowed him to touch any of those items?
No, sir.
After Mr. Reeves was taken out by Sergeant Griner and the 2 other deputies, what did you and your wife do?
I just maintained where I was at, and then, some deputies started flowing in, or detectives, whatever they were, and requested we, stay where we're at until they get things situated and start filling out some statement forms.
Okay. You've been in law enforcement many years now, right?
Yes, sir.
You know what witness contamination is?
Yes, sir.
While you were waiting for law enforcement to arrive, did you see or hear anyone talking about this case?
No, sir, I didn't hear or see any of that. I was doing what I was supposed to be doing.
Did you observe anybody that appeared to be talking about the case?
Again, I was doing my thing of what they requested us to do. I wasn't paying attention to anybody else. I was trying to maintain and take care of my wife.
Sergeant Hamilton, was your wife pretty upset?
Yes, sir, very much so.
Crying?
Yes, sir.
Traumatic experience for you and her?
Absolutely.
Did you fill out a written statement in this case?
Yes, sir, I did.
Okay. And in that written statement, did you document or memorialize every single thing that happened on that day, January 13th of 2014?
No, sir. Preliminary, I wrote down a short synopsis of, what had occurred, just to kind of get a basis for it, and so I could, we move along.
Okay. Did you come in contact with the detective who later became known to you as Detective Proctor?
Yes, sir, I did.
Did he conduct a taped interview of you?
Yes, sir, I did.
You have any idea how long that taped interview was?
It was short, 5 or 6 minutes, I believe is what I've seen.
And in that interview, did you give him a detailed account of everything that happened in that movie theater?
No, sir, I didn't.
Why not?
My belief is what we were doing was to establish, and again, this is not my case.
Right.
I just happened to be wrong place, wrong time. Was to establish the probable cause, give a preliminary statement of what went on, and then the agency could, expound on that at a later date, whatever they needed, whatever the evidence brought forward that they needed to ask questions about.
So you thought they'd come back and do a lengthy, detailed interview, right?
That's what I thought.
Recording, videotape, the whole works?
Yes, sir.
Have you worked homicide cases before in Sumter County?
Yes, sir.
Is that normal for a detective to take basically or conduct a very short interview?
Objection, Your Honor. You're talking about a completely different county, and the policies of the Pasco County Sheriff's Office and the policies of this particular officer are two. There's no proper predicate for that opinion.
So he's a law enforcement officer. He can testify to what the protocol is and what...
I'm going to overrule, he can testify as to what he does. I get it in Sumter County. And certainly, you're not asking him what Pasco County does. I'll overrule.
Well, let me put it this way. I've worked for 2 different agencies. And it's normal to get especially in those situations, if there is some type of trauma or an event that people are not going to be as clear at first, we give them a statement form, give them some type of, it's a preliminary statement that just gives the basic facts of what, just boils down to what happened. Then if we feel necessary, what the evidence, we have different things go on as we do interviews, we pull them back in, do an audio and video interview with them, and expound on what they said from the initial time. So giving us more information on specifics. So.
Okay. May I have a moment, Judge?
3 minutes.
Judge pass the witness. Thank you.
Ross?
We just have a second to set up.
3 minutes.
We stipulated on this one. So just so that we can start, we have stipulated to the introduction of item 2AP, and it looks like the date and time was 012414 or 1455 hours. May I have that marked as an exhibit that has been introduced into the evidence stand clerk? It's the interview of Sergeant Hamilton.
Any objection?
Well, right now, we don't know what he's going to do with it, so he's just having it marked.
At some point in time, we're going to
Well,
play it.
if it's going to be marked, it's coming in.
Well, I think before, it's not my witness, I shouldn't be talking. Mr.
Judge,
Garcia?
may it please the court, I mean, it's going to depend. I don't think the whole interview is going to come in.
Judge,
If he plans on trying to impeach him, he may play certain portions of it.
Judge, Mr. Martin and I had agreed, both on Mr. Reeves and all the other witnesses that had taped statements, that we would be able to use those taped statements freely in cross-examination. That's why we had the stipulation for the introduction of those particular CDs.
If there's inconsistencies, now I'm addressing the stipulation. The stipulation was in the event that, and we're apples and oranges a little bit. With Mr. Reeves, we're talking about a defendant statement, where potentially if I'm using it against him, then the rules are different. When we're talking about an inconsistent statement, the agreement was that we wouldn't have to authenticate it. I gave him a transcript. If there's something inconsistent and he wants to use a transcript, but I never agreed you just go play the whole thing. I mean, he can use it if there's inconsistencies, he knows where they are, and he can show the court there's inconsistencies, then we're not going to object to any type of authenticity or what was said. But he still has to lay the predicate.
Judge, I will tell you that you don't have to impeach a witness. This was his interview. He was there. He's subject to both direct and cross-examination. It's not hearsay. It's part of the process that took place in the investigation. I can have him play the entire tape and and listen to it and question him about every single statement that he made in that tape. And that's going to be my position. The court will have to rule, but this is not a hearsay statement. This is a statement where actually he gave a statement to Detective Proctor, and he's going to be able to talk about every single thing that he said in that statement. You don't have to bring it as form of impeachment at this point in time.
Judge, it's an out-of-court statement that's being offered for the truth of the matter asserted. It's clearly hearsay. Just because somebody's audio taped doesn't mean you can play it in court. That's no different than me having a state witness and I go, Judge, Mrs. Smith gave us a taped interview. I want to play it for you and the members of this jury. You can't do that.
Judge, it is not hearsay
Why is it not hearsay?
because you have a witness that's able to be directed and cross-examination. The whole purpose of hearsay and the reason that hearsay is not allowed in is because you have a lack of a confrontation. Here, the prosecution has a confrontation, the defense has a confrontation, it's a piece of evidence. It is not hearsay by any stretch of the imagination.
To me, it's similar to bringing in a police report.
No.
When you've got the officer sitting right here who testifies live as to what is going on, you know.
The only reason that it's not allowed, Your Honor, in certain circumstances is if it's self-serving. Here, this is not a self-serving type of document. It is an interview by a detective over an alleged witness, and he's here subject to cross-examination and subject to direct examination. It's actually their witness. They've listened to this tape. It's not something that they haven't seen, touched, and heard.
Judge, I'd invite the court to look at the definition of hearsay, and you're going to see that it's an out-of-court statement being offered for the truth of the matter asserted, which that's exactly what Mr. Escobar is doing. And it's not admissible, Judge.
Hearsay is a statement other than one made by the declarant while testifying at the trial or hearing, offered in evidence to prove the truth of the matter asserted. A statement is not hearsay if the declarant testifies at the trial or hearing and is subject to cross-examination concerning the statement, and the statement is A, inconsistent, or B, consistent with the declarant's testimony, is it offered to rebut an express or implied charge against the declarant of improper influence, motive, or recent fabrication. C, one of identification of a person made after perceiving the person.
Exactly.
Which one is it?
B.
What?
At this point in time, I can use it for A and B. I can use it as an inconsistent statement.
He hasn't, well, you got to point it out.
Judge, we're going to use it for both purposes. It's not...
Hold on.
Okay.
Inconsistent statement, what statement are you alleging is inconsistent?
Well, we're going to be, at some point in time, he's going to make a statement and I can use it if this is inconsistent with it.
No, that's not the way it works. You don't play that and then ask him questions and see if it's inconsistent.
A, absolutely. On A, I have to have the inconsistent statement before I play it, but not for B.
B has to be consistent
That's correct?
and is offered to rebut
That's correct.
an express or implied charge against the declarant of improper influence, motive, or recent fabrication.
And that's the prosecutor's good when he's saying, hey, listen, you know, the only thing I did in that particular statement is I only gave him a little glimpse of what I knew. It wasn't the whole thing that I gave him. It was just a little glimpse of what I knew because I expected at some point in time that a detective was going to come and interview me and get a more thorough statement.
Then how does that go to impeach him, Judge?
It goes to impeach him on his bias. On his bias. That's perfectly...
No, that's not
bias.
Where?
Judge, listen, I can make my argument. That's my argument. If the court feels that that argument is not correct, then the court can make its ruling. We've got a good record on it. We've got the tape here. But I certainly am going to, at certain times, try to introduce that statement, and the court can rule as the court feels is appropriate. I respect whatever the court decides to do in this matter. We've got a record.
If it's inconsistent, just as Mr. Garcia indicated at the beginning of this argument, it can be offered for impeachment. And if it's, you haven't even asked him a single question yet, and you're
Judge, I wasn't going to play it right now. I just told you that. When he asked, what are you going to do with it? I told the court, I'm going to play it.
Right,
But I'm not going to play it right now.
is offered to rebut an express or implied charge against the declarant of improper influence, motive, or recent fabrication.
Motive. What he just testified to was, you know, a lot of things aren't going to be in this particular tape because, you know, I only give them a little bit because I expect at some point in time that some detective is going to come back later and is going to now give me the opportunity to give him the entire stuff. That is to show his bad motive. That tape
How is that a bad motive?
Because the detective is asking him, tell me everything you know.
Judge, Detective Proctor did not say, tell me everything you know. Detective Proctor says, tell me what happened. He didn't say, tell me everything you know.
This is on scene, this took place?
On scene. On scene. Anything else you can tell me. Anything else that you can tell me. I've got the transcript right here. Anything else that you can tell me. That's what Detective Proctor is telling this particular witness.
All right, I'm beginning to think that this is the same as I kept saying yesterday, what you think is inconsistent often is not what I think is inconsistent. I'm thinking we're gonna go along those lines somehow. I'm going to sustain the objection at this point, but you weren't going to play it right now.
I wasn't going to play right now. I was just giving the court a heads up, just like they asked, how are you going to use it? I gave the court the heads up.
All right, then we'll get to it when the time comes.
It's over there.
Well, that's the second part of this.
They have stipulated to the admissibility of that particular, for certain purposes that are going to be allowed or disallowed by the court.
All right, well, it's going to be proper anyways, I'm guessing, so.
It will be.
We'll go ahead and mark it. Third possibility, you have an objection to it coming in during your case in chief, if you will?
Judge, we had stipulated that it could be used within our case in chief. Either, in other words, he used it and he was going to use it with Mr. Reeves, and so we had this to facilitate the whole process. So
what the stipulation was that in the event that it became relevant for some legal reason, then we would not object to either using the transcript, if that was more convenient, like I did with Mr. Reeves, or play it. But when I played it for Mr. Reeves, that was being offered for a whole different purpose. Now we're having it for the inconsistent part, and he's got to lay the predicate.
All right, I get that,
Okay.
but my only question now is, typically, I don't care when a piece of item of evidence comes in, but typically there's an objection from one side or the other if it's not being introduced during their case in chief.
Well,
Do you have an objection
No.
to it being entered at this point?
No, because it really doesn't matter anymore,
All right,
because you
that's-
don't lose an opening and close like several years ago. That was a big deal.
That's what I figured.
Right,
If-
so-
That's why I don't care,
That
but
rule
if there's an
changed.
objection, I
No.
have to address it, and I'm not gonna let it come in without having it addressed.
If you let him use it, then
All
it needs to come in.
It'll be,
Right.
it'll be admitted with the reservations that I've indicated.
Well, right now, it's just marked for
Right,
identification,
well,
until he
when
plans
it's
to use
not, then she's not marking it. If it's marked by your identification, that's fine. But when she marks it, it comes in and she holds it.
Well, I don't know what she's done yet. But right now, I thought it was just marked for identification. That's
Well,
what you're doing.
she doesn't mark it for identification, you do.
Judge, we're asking at this point in time, pursuant to our stipulation, because it's got to be proffered anyway, so that we have it introduced into evidence.
All right, so it'll be defendant's 49. You're offering it, it'll be with your number.
Thank you, Your Honor.
All right.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Sergeant Hamilton.
Good afternoon, sir.
Sergeant, you started your law enforcement career at the detention facility was it in Brooksville?
Brooksville, yes, sir.
And how long were you in that capacity?
Well, a little over 4 years, I believe.
Okay. And then you moved where?
To the Brooksville Police Department.
Okay, and how long were you there?
Just short of 5 years, I believe.
And then you went to Sumter?
Yes, sir.
Now, you talked a little bit on direct examination concerning your education. You received an Associate's of Science degree?
Yes, sir.
And where was that from?
Columbia Southern University.
Okay, and was that a online education, or was that attending classes?
Yes, sir. Online.
Okay, and then you also got a Bachelor's of Art, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
From what institution?
Columbia Southern.
Okay, and where is Columbia Southern?
It's in Alabama.
Okay, and so your Bachelor's of Art was also an online, not attending actual courses in person?
That's correct.
Okay. Now, when you started with Sumter, you started as a patrol deputy for about a year and a half,
That's correct.
and then you moved to a school resource officer for another 4 or 5 years,
Yes, sir.
and then you had some time with the property detective division, correct?
That's correct. Yes, sir.
And then your position was that you were drowning, so you decided that you wanted to go back to patrol.
That's correct.
Okay. And when this particular event happened, you were a corporal with Sumter County, is that correct?
The event we're talking about here, right?
The shooting incident, yes.
I was a corporal.
Okay. Now, before we get started, your position is that you don't think that anybody can be 100% sure of anything.
Not all the time.
Well, no, you're saying,
Like we're-
your position is that no one can be 100% sure of anything.
100% sure of anything?
Yeah.
I'm 100% sure I'm sitting here.
Okay, well, have you ever had that feeling that you can't be 100% sure of anything?
Judge, I'm going to object as to relevancy. Have you ever had that feeling that you can't be 100% sure?
Has that been your position ever before as a law enforcement officer?
There's an objection on the table. Argument? What?
It's very relevant. That's his stance. His stance is that he doesn't believe that that anyone can be 100% sure.
I'll overrule for the,
Is that correct?
100% sure 100% of the time? No.
And you believe that certain individuals are influenced by their experiences?
Influenced by their experiences?
Yeah, influenced by their experiences. In other words, people's experiences or perceptions can color what they see as 100%.
I'm not tracking you on that. That's
Okay, page 18. Lines,
Is this deposition, Mr. Escobar? or
it is,
the
this is
bond?
deposition that I took of him. And the date of that, Mr. Garcia, is March the 20th of 2015.
Yes, sir. You said page 18?
Page 18, lines 17 through 22. You remember the following questions, and then, well, first of all, you remember the deposition I took of
Yes,
you.
absolutely.
Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And you remember by being sworn to tell the truth and nothing but the truth in that deposition?
That's correct. Yes, sir.
And you remember me asking you the following questions. Okay, so can we agree that people's experiences or their perceptions can color what they see as 100%? Answer, sure. I mean, I'm glad you didn't do this depo with me and my wife. It would have took us 4 hours to do this.
Objection as to relevancy, Judge. What does that have to do with this hearing?
He said, sure, absolutely, that perceptions and his expectations, okay, can influence what he believes. That was his answer.
all right.
No.
He changed.
Hold on.
No, Judge, he's asking the question. He's the one posing the question. You can't take it out of context. He asked the question.
I'm even going to go further so the court can see. That's what it was.
Wait a minute, stop. One at a time, first of all, and I think I've been over this procedure a couple of times. If you're using it as an inconsistent statement, then it better be consistent. And Mr. Garcia, is it inconsistent?
Judge, just so the court is aware of, Mr. Escobar or Mr. Michaels poses this question. Okay, so we can agree then that people's experience or their perceptions can color what they see as 100%?
And he says,
And
sure.
his answer is sure. I'm glad you didn't do this depo with me and my wife. It would have took us 4 hours to do this. So, in what context? Well, he asked that question, but in what context? I don't see how this is impeachment. What does this go to?
I asked him that same question, and he said no. And so now I asked him that same question, and it's sure under oath.
Judge, the problem is it's on a collateral matter. What does it go to?
Where are you going with this?
Judge, because everything here is going to be concerning his perception. This whole thing is his perception. He was in the theater.
All right, I'm going to allow it, overruled.
Now, when you went into that theater, you wanted to sit at the highest level, right?
Yes, sir.
As part of what you do.
Yes, sir.
And why is it that you do that?
And I always take the higher ground. It gives you a better advantage point of anything, and that's law enforcement in you, that's nothing else.
Okay. And so you did that as part of what you do in your daily life?
Yes, sir.
You take the high ground?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And so you believe that you sat in row A,
Yes, sir.
which you testified on direct, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And you believe that you were 5 to 6 chairs from Mr. Reeves?
Somewhere in that area, yes, sir.
Well, could it have been 7?
I believe it was 5 or 6 seats.
Okay, well, could it have been 7?
No,
And it could have been 8?
no.
Well, let's try to examine that if we can.
Okay.
You're seated, looking at the screen, correct?
Yes, sir.
And your wife's to your right.
Yes, sir.
So let's make your seat number 1. Okay?
Okay.
And as we go to the right, we'll figure out how many seats. Seat number 2 was your wife.
That's correct.
So now you're right next to your wife to the left, and we're going to count how many seats between you and Mr. Reeves. We've only got 1 now because it's your wife. And so if you're looking to the screen, there are 3 to 4 empty seats between your wife and an older couple. So if we add 4, 3 or 4, so your wife being 1,
Judge, I'm going to object. Is this a question or what?
yes, I'm going to ask him a question. Your wife being 1, and your statement, you agree, 3 to 4 between your wife and the older couple, correct?
Could be. Yes, sir.
So now that's 5. We'll keep a running total here if we can, okay? Now there's an older couple. Couple meaning 2 seats, correct?
That's correct.
So let's add those 2. So we had 5 and 2, now 7, correct?
Yes, sir.
And you indicated that this older couple, they were in their 60s maybe, correct?
Yes, sir.
And then there is 1 to 2 seats between the older couple and Mr. Reeves. So 2 seats. So now we've got 5, 7, 9 seats between you and Mr. Reeves. So what is it? 5 or 9? Because you just said a few seconds ago it couldn't be more than 5.
They could have been in that area. I mean, you didn't give me the benefit of the doubt. You took 1 seat away from me because you said could be 1 or 2.
I'm trying to get
So, I don't
your
know.
testimony and see if in fact it's either 5 or 9, or telling me, Rick, I have no idea how many seats.
It could be within that realm. I mean, a lot was going on that day.
Now, you believe you got to the theater actually at 1:30, isn't that not correct?
That's correct.
1:30.
1:30.
And then You got there shortly before the movie started. In fact, the previews were playing.
No,
Right?
there was no previews playing when I got there.
Was the movie playing?
No, there was no movie playing.
But I'm going to check. The testimony was he arrived at 12:45.
Judge, that was on direct. He says now at 1:30, and I've got him here in the deposition at 1:30. And so he agreed with me, 1:30. He may not like that statement, but that's what he said, and that's what's in my depo.
But in what context, though, Judge? He may be saying he arrived, he got into the movie theater.
Judge, whether he got into the actual Theater 10 or whether he got into the Cobb Theater, I'll take both of those.
What's the objection?
I'll withdraw it for now, Judge.
When you sat down, the previews were already playing, correct? You know what previews are, trailers? Sitcoms, I think you called it sitcoms.
No, they were not already playing. They came on after I sat down.
Well, how much after?
I don't know.
Now, you wear glasses.
Yes, sir.
You didn't have your glasses on that matinee movie, did you?
I probably had contacts at the time.
Okay. You probably had contacts, or you just weren't wearing anything?
No, I would have had contacts in.
Okay, and so the way you wear contacts is you wear one contact of a particular kind and another contact of another particular kind, right?
Right, I'm farsighted.
And so, do you know what correction you have? Which eye are you farsighted in?
I don't know.
But you wear different strength of contacts, one on one eye, right, to see up close, the other eye to see distance.
Not to see distance, no. It corrects the other one and pulls it into allowing me to see up close.
Well, I realize that one of those contacts allows you to see up close, but if you put another contact in your eye, what does that do?
That allows me to see correctly. What I would-
Distance?
Distance and up close.
Now, your position is it not that during the previews that they dropped down the lighting, and that day it was, quote, very low?
Very low. Yes, sir.
And in fact, your position also is that what they were playing on the screen was loud. And the reason that people like to go to the theater is because they can listen to that loud stuff.
That's correct.
And you certainly, when you go into the theater, you turn your phone off because it distracts people.
That's correct.
And when you're seated in the chair to the theater, you're not seated upright. You're kind of lounging back.
That's correct.
Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And your wife's here to your right. And it was your wife that nudged you. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
To get your attention, because you were focusing on the previews.
That's correct.
And it was about that time that you, even independently, heard loud conversation. Correct?
Correct.
And that conversation that you heard was kind of blending with the noise from the previews, correct?
I believe I used the word muttered.
Okay? But you know one thing, someone was talking even louder than the previews. One person.
Not louder than the previews.
Page 45, Mr. Garcia. Starting on line 12. All the way through 25, so that we can have a doctrine of completeness. You say,
Hang on, let him read it. If it's not inconsistent, then
Okay.
that's not how we
Okay.
proceed.
Judge, I'm going to object. This is consistent with what he testified to.
Judge, he said it was not louder.
May I see it, please?
Sure. Starts on page 12. Line 12.
Sustained.
Judge,
I'm sorry, Herb.
Sustained.
Judge, just so that we can proffer this for the record, he initially said that it was not louder, and on page 45, we'll put this in the record at some point in time, on page 45, lines...
Nowhere in there that I just read does it say he said it was louder than the previews. That was your question.
Judge, he's talking about the muttering. We were talking, this section...
Muttering. Someone said something a little louder than just muttering, not louder than the previews. That's what I just read.
Judge, this section is talking about the previews, but I will...
Go ahead, read it into the record.
Well, I'm gonna give the page number so that we'll put it in the record. Page 45 of his deposition, taken on March the 20th, 2015, lines 12 through 25. Now, once your wife nudges you, you look to your right. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And is your wife sitting up as well?
No, sir.
She's leaning back?
She's sitting basically like I am, enough for me to see around her.
And as you look there, you're seeing, the only thing you see was one person standing up, correct?
That's correct.
And what you're really seeing is that person's shadow, correct?
I'm seeing a human being standing up, yes, sir.
But in a shadow form.
Right. Not like you're standing there, but I see all of you
You're
just...
seeing a shadow.
Right. Silhouette.
And you realize that that's a pretty tall guy, right?
Not at the time, no.
You didn't realize he was tall. But you saw that he was standing?
He was, yes, sir.
In fact, your position is that you had a very odd view. You could only see the side of this person.
That's correct.
Basically, you were only seeing half of him from the waist up.
Yes, sir.
Really, only to the waist, from the waist to the shoulders.
Yes, sir.
And you certainly didn't see who he was loud to, correct?
No, sir.
Certainly you did not hear Mr. Reeves saying anything, correct?
No, sir.
You were trying to evaluate what was going on over there, right? It was kind of odd to you.
Yes, sir.
You wanted to find out, quote, who was raising hell.
That's correct.
You don't know how long before your first observation of Mr. Olson, you don't know how long Mr. Olson was speaking loudly to the people behind him.